Before Geralt was trying to find Ciri or bang two sorcerers at once, Geralt was accused of murdering a particular king, which led to quite the adventure for the White Wolf. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, then let me tell you why you should play The Witcher 2. Not a lot of people know this, but The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is actually the third game in a trilogy of Witcher games created by CD Projekt Red. The trilogy as a whole has its up and downs. Witcher 1 hasn't aged well, it's pretty skippable honestly. Witcher 2, fantastic. Witcher 3 is a timeless classic really. The Witcher 1 has not aged well graphically or mechanically. The story is still solid and it adds some really interesting breadcrumbs for The Witcher 3 specifically, but unless you really want to play the full journey, it can be a struggle at times. It's also nice to see how far CD Projekt Red have come since The Witcher 1. Like, The Witcher 1 was really just crawling out the gates, and then, The Witcher 2, they really hit their stride. The Witcher 3, they're sprinting down the lane, and then now look at what Cyberpunk has become. The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, however, has everything you could want in a CDPR game, and it has everything that The Witcher 3 has, honestly. The game starts with a nice view, doing Witcher things, killing drowners in dark sewers, doing more Witcher things like looting peasants' homes after saving them and demanding no payment.
Be careful. You may not be so lucky next time.
And, of course, the sexy sorceresses. What more could you need? Well, for anyone that has asked me in the past, I'd always say that The Witcher 2 is the best jumping on point to dip your toes into this amazing world. An issue I've seen a lot of people talk about with The Witcher 3 is that you meet tons and tons of characters, and Geralt is like, "Oh buddy, oh pal, how are you?" And you have no idea who that person is as the player, just like this guy who randomly pops up in The Witcher 3. If you want to know more about who he is and why he's hiding in this cave, The Witcher 2 has all of the answers. Now, if you don't know anything about the lore behind the Witcher books or the games, at the start of the first game, Geralt awakes after being absent for a long time and has lost his memory. During the events of The Witcher 2, Geralt, still without his memory, will learn not only about the events happening in the world and the story that's currently presented to him, but about the characters that you meet along the way, and you as the player and Geralt will start to get his memory back. There are these fantastic flashback moments which start to tell you more about Geralt, his backstory, and who the important figures for The Witcher 3 are, namely Ciri and Yennefer. If you're a book reader and looking for a reason to play this game, there is plenty of connection to the source material in this game's story specifically, and without spoiling the end, there is a fantastic payoffs to an event that happens in one of the short stories, just like in The Witcher 1, which has a lot of core storytelling from one of the original short stories. I originally played the Witcher games without having read the books. I actually started with The Witcher 2, and while you're not missing anything, it just adds more context to the story, in the same way that playing The Witcher 2 adds more context to The Witcher 3. Don't stress about not having that context though, because Geralt doesn't remember what he has done in the past, so when you meet a certain character, they do a pretty decent job of explaining who they are to Geralt and that relationship, because Geralt doesn't remember that either. Look, if you're not convinced yet, in the first 2 hours of the game, you siege a castle, you fight a dragon, and you have some quiet, sexy time with a lovely, sexy sorceress, and then you escape from prison. That's just the first 2 hours, and the game is about 30 hours long, roughly, depending on the amount of time you spend doing side quests and the other activities that you can do throughout the game. There is plenty left to enjoy after these first couple of hours for sure. The story is also very replayable in The Witcher 2, as Act 2 of the game will take a very different path depending on a decision that you make at the end of Act 1. As with all good RPGs, you will need to make a difficult decision. There isn't really a right answer or a wrong answer, and the second act of the game will play out on either side of a major conflict depending on that decision that you make. Act 3 does see both of these lines merge together for the big finale, but whew, is it a good finale, and it sets up The Witcher 3 perfectly. One of the main reasons why I believe The Witcher 2 is far more replayable nowadays is that the combat has aged really well. While there is still some jank to it, don't get me wrong, but it's still a blast to play and play around with the signs and dancing around your enemies, similar to what you would expect in The Witcher 3. There is a deep progression system as well to advance Geralt to the monster-slaying Witcher of your dreams. Something that I think The Witcher 2 has over The Witcher 3 is that there is more of a pace to fighting monsters. In The Witcher 3, for the most part, you can just take a contract, charge headfirst into the monster. Obviously, you've got to do your Witcher sense, you've got to follow that trail for 25 minutes, but once you get there, you don't really need to worry about setting up Geralt the Witcher. You can just charge into those boss fights without much setup. In The Witcher 2, there is a far more deliberate preparation to these kind of encounters, making sure you have brewed the potions and Geralt is ready, which is much more in line with the Witchers within this universe, and I enjoy that slowed down pace where each fight you make sure you have the right oils on your blades and you've taken the right potions before that fight. In The Witcher 3, these kind of mechanics are all still there, don't get me wrong, but it takes more of a sideline approach to them, so you can pop these potions and oils whenever you like. You don't have to methodically think about the next engagement that you're about to have. If you don't enjoy the combat in The Witcher 2, there are mods that you can install to make some tweaks and changes, like the full combat rebalance mod made by an actual developer now at CD Projekt Red. There are plenty of others that you can play around with as well. The full combat rebalance changes the way that the combat works ever so slightly just to make it more fluid, by adding new animations and changing the way that some of the armor and the back-end calculations are done, just to make the game feel a little bit more fluid. And I have played the game with this mod and I did enjoy it, but I do enjoy the overall base vanilla combat in The Witcher 2 as well. So I would recommend to try it without the mod first. If you don't enjoy it, then definitely look into installing this mod if you are on PC. There is also plenty of other mods that you can install, like things to change the way the HUD layouts or anything else that you can think of. If you're still not convinced, here is a cool Lord of the Rings reference.
Or one of the 20 legendary rings of power would be best.
One to bring them all and in the darkness bind them.
Right. And then I'll have to run barefooted to the top of a volcano.
The Witcher 2 was a last generation game. Wait, are we still calling it last generation with the next generation about to hit? Is this the last generation? The Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era generation thing, that time. Anyway, The Witcher 2 can be playable on Xbox 360 and Xbox One through backwards compatibility, PlayStation 3, not PlayStation 4 sadly, and PC. The game is often very, very cheap on PC. I've seen it as low as $5 on the GOG store, and this game is well worth a $5 investment in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts on The Witcher 2 down below. If you have played the game or plan to play it again, follow me on Twitter and Instagram and on Twitch, where I stream 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday Australian night times, which we recently actually hit 300 followers, so thank you guys for all the love over there on that platform. Thanks also for watching this video. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.